Martin Sheen, Ken Burns, Jeff Shaara. So this is very much about the meaning of Gettysburg, and I think everybody here in different but similar ways as well was affected by the Killer Angels, which is 50 years old. And I think it's, again, Ken and I just talked about this on stage a few minutes ago, but the importance of storytelling, and this is one of the master classes in historic storytelling. And let's talk about that. Why is storytelling so important to understanding history? Ken.
Well, I think to finish or to continue what we were talking about this morning in the Majestic is that it's the best alternative to argument. You know, to undo the Richard Powers thing, that it's not a dialectic. Storytelling is complicated. I.F. Stone said this, you know, that history is not melodrama but tragedy, and therefore life is tragedy, meaning it does not have simplistic all one thing or all the other, and that we're sort of obligated to sort of figure out how to replicate that complexity from the past so that it helps us make a little bit better sense of the present.
Yeah, I will say too that not all historical fiction works. I mean, some of it's good, some of it's sort of simplistic. A lot of historical fiction is pure fiction. I mean, there's nothing authentic in the story, which is fine, because by definition, with fiction, you can do anything you want. My father understood that, and he had written a lot of stories throughout his earlier career, science fiction mostly, police drama, that kind of thing. But he understood that to tell the Battle of Gettysburg is an awesome responsibility there. I mean, because people care. I mean, people know things. I mean, people know the facts. And, you know, Bruce Catton has been out there, and, you know, Shelby Foote was writing. And, I mean, people were beginning to sort of wake up to that. So he knew it had to be a good story. And that was his great talent, as he was a marvelous storyteller. And that shows. I mean, I think what Stephen just narrated up there, it's visceral. There's no argument, as Ken said. I mean, the story is what it is. You can dispute a line of dialogue if you want, but if, again, the fiction writer, his line of dialogue is anything he wants it to be. So my father certainly opened the door for me, and unfortunately he didn't open it for himself. I mean, the book came out in '74, won the Pulitzer Prize in '75. He died in 1988, 5 years before the movie came out, which, you know, last fall we celebrated the 30th anniversary of the movie. He had no idea what he left behind. And to me, in what I do, that's an awesome responsibility on my part, is to, you know, live up to what he was doing.
That's the best story I've heard today, right? Here is a son whose father did not get the full recognition that was due to him in his lifetime. He had a little bit of it. He was awarded something. There was things in the works, including our documentary, that was going to center Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain. And you've been obligated. You've felt that obligation to sort of switch your own courses and follow his. That's, Jeff, as we've talked about him many times, an amazing thing.
Yeah, and of course I did that with no expectations. My father had expectations his whole writing career. He would write something and he expected you'd like it. And, you know, he expected that a publisher would publish it, and the short stories would be in Playboy and Cosmopolitan and Red Book and Saturday Evening Post. And then sometimes it wouldn't happen. That was unacceptable. And that attitude I never have had. I'm always surprised when good things happen. So, which maybe is sort of sad, but.
Or the key.
And so it's a book, it becomes a movie, and Martin, you become involved with it pretty late as it's becoming a movie, right? And how do you become involved with the Killer Angels?
Well, yeah, I some of the more intriguing work I've done over my entire professional life is kind of like a second choice. I don't have to mention the one in particular, but yeah, I replaced someone in the film that really kind of got me some notoriety. And I had the feeling, and it's never been confirmed, maybe Jeff could tell me, or Rob, our director, but I had a feeling somebody fell out, or couldn't make it, or couldn't make a deal, and at the last minute disappeared. It's because I got kind of an urgent phone call from an actor that I admired but didn't know, Tom Berenger, and I suspect Charlie gave him my phone number, and he called me with a very excited proposal that I get over here and play this part, that they were all here. I think they had already begun filming, or they were just about to start, and they were kind of delaying all of the scenes that I would have to do until I had a chance to get caught up. And so they sent over a script by messenger, and I read it through, and then they said, Melissa Gilbert called me. Her husband, Bo, was in the film as well, and she said, you've got to read this book, Killer Angels. Have you seen it? And she said, that's what this script is based on. I said, no, I haven't seen it. So they sent over a copy. I read it on the plane. And so I didn't have a clue what I was getting into. I was only sorry that I wasn't the first choice. But I made
no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah. So I had to get up to speed. One of the concerns I had was the accent. I called a guy and I can't even remember his name. I can't remember anybody's name anymore. But, and this guy, somebody said, well, he's really good with accents and he'll help you out. And so I called this guy and he said, well, where are you from? And I said, I'm from Ohio. He said, oh, that will never do. No, he said, they're too soft and too nasal. He said, but I've seen you play before, so I think you ought to try this technique. He said, remember that Robert E. Lee was a gentleman to the nth degree, and he was a stoic as well, and yet he had a great deal of compassion and understanding, and he had, like all people with big egos, he also had a great humility. And because he kind of understood that the ego is how we identify ourselves, not how we destroy others. And so he said one thing. He said, "Are you growing a beard?" I said, "There's no time. They're going to have to fit one on me."
That's a good line. There's no time.
I wish I had time to grow a beard.
Yeah.
But at that time, they would have had to color it. I saw a picture of myself the other night. One of the lads showed me while we were here filming off camera, and my hair was just so spectacularly brown. At any rate, I got into the part here. A big concern besides the speech pattern was the horses. I'm not good on horses. Sam and I did a film together in Mexico in 1979. He may not remember because he's getting a bit old as well. But, ouch! We did a film where we combat. He played an Indian warrior who had this brilliant stallion horse. And I played this renegade moron trying to steal it from him, and I stole it from him. He did. I stole it, and he got it back, and that was the last scene in the film. As you see me weeping as he's running away on my horse. But at any rate, but I still was never comfortable on horses. And so they brought two horses, a young guy from his farm in Illinois, and one of them was kind of sleepy, and I think the other one was a stallion who did not like me and had my number, as a good, horses generally do. So that was a big concern. They had to hold his what do you call the thing in the mouth, the bit, down when I was speaking on the horse, and God forbid if there was a rifle shot or a cannon anywhere, he bolted. And they had a sense of turning in circles, and I could never kind of get around. It was almost like the horse was saying, this is your last chance. And if you don't get off now, you're in for the long haul. But at any rate, those two concerns. But the speaking pattern was important. And he said, try, particularly with the consonants and the nouns and so forth, to keep the speech in your mouth. You don't have to open your mouth so much. And he said, if you have the beard, that will be a great protection. And so no one will see that it's become a technique, but so that I began to speak without moving my lips, and people thought I'd been in prison. And so, but you would just fall into the rhythm,
Wow.
and you would begin to see how you could affect something in the long run. You had to be patient, this above all. And so it was a cadence and a rhythm. And I called him back on the phone after trying it a couple of times, and he encouraged me, where to think. And he said that it's always a rhythm. Even if you say no, it is a rhythm. It has a musical beat to it, and it has bars in it. And sometimes they love to speak. And you remember in those days, the main source of reading material, both sides were equally open to Shakespeare, the Book of Common Prayer, and the Bible. And you could see it in Lincoln's rhetoric and all the people of the time in those magnificent letters that so many of the soldiers wrote home. It's like they wrote poetry, and this was, the time was so intense that it was important to let people know what your condition was at that time. And so I fell into that, and I fell in love with it. And it was one of the best times of my life, frankly. And
That's amazing.
I just want to, oh, okay, thanks, man.
And Ken, I know that you were integral to getting that book on the screen and this historical story becoming on the screen. And tell us a little about that.
So I was contacted after the Civil War came out. The success of the series in 1990 had inspirited Ron Maxwell, the director, the guy who'd been shopping this around for a long time, and he really wanted to do it. And he had a kind of impossible hybrid movie, and it's still to this day, this amazing. The longer version is 6 hours, right?
It's 5, yeah.
And it's the bloodiest battle. There's no blood. There's no, thank God, unlike North and South, where people fight each other, and then you sort of walk down into the clearing, and there is the heaving bosom against heaving bosom, not North against South, but the girlfriends just happen to be at the edge of the battle for Patrick Swayze, and so there's like it feels like a real battle without the sort of gore that would be part of the late 90s. I'm thinking, Saving Private Ryan, where the verisimilitude was important at that moment. And I was encouraging, but I'm in a totally different field. I'm working on new things, trying to keep my head above water. But I won the Producer of the Year award from the Producers Guild in '91. And no, it was just documentary. Kevin Costner won it for Dances with Wolves, and so I spent a long time trying not to have an epileptic seizure from all of the flashbulbs that would go off anytime we walked out of something. But the MC of the event was Ted Turner, and if anybody knows Ted Turner, he's really sui generis, just a testament to the efficacy of lithium and many other things, and. He said to me, sorry. He said, what are you doing for breakfast tomorrow? I want to see you really fast. He ordered me to breakfast the next morning. So he goes, yeah, we'll do it at Jane's house. Jane's not there, so don't get your hopes up. So we go to his house in Santa Monica, or her house in Santa Monica, a modest affair. And he's saying, so this guy is bothering me. He says this about this Killer Angels. I said, have you read it? It's unbelievable. He goes, no, I don't have time to read it. Meaning he had no attention span to read a very short novel. And so I said, he goes, you think I should do it? I said, Ted, you're the only person who could do this, is what I said. And so a few weeks later, Ron called me up and he goes, what did you do? Thank you. I owe you so much. You have to do this. You have to do that. You have to come when we're shooting. And I said, yeah. So he kept inviting me to the shooting. And I was busy. We were working on another film, the baseball series, and, in the trenches, and I'm, a dull boy. And one of my editors had taken his vacation in August and came down here and wore wool for 2 weeks and said it was the best time of his life. So Maxwell calls again, as he was doing he said, you got to come down, please. I said, okay, I'll come down. So I brought my daughters,
And he said, we're doing the scene today where the Confederates unload on the Union positions on Cemetery Ridge. From Seminary Ridge, it's the largest artillery bombardment in the history of the world up to that point, followed by the Union response, which is even bigger, and then Pickett's Charge happens. And I said, great. And I said, you got that great scene with Winfield Scott Hancock. And he goes, yeah, he's riding up and down, unafraid of the shells that are going over his head. He could have easily, as a Corps commander, be back with Meade, a couple miles away where they were not free of some of the shot went through and cut a man in two in that house. But I said, and he's got one of the greatest lines. And he said, no, it's a silent scene. I mean, except for the din of the artillery. And I said, Ron, somebody comes up and grabs the crupper of the horse and says, General, get down. We can't spare you. And Scott says, one of the greatest lines in battle, there are times when a Corps commander's life does not count, which is, I just thought, a really wonderful thing. And so he said, well, that's great, let's do that. You be the guy. So just warning Martin and Sam too, just somebody's on your heels. But we go and they say stuff like, we're gonna set this cannon off. Of course, it doesn't have a shot, and we're only going to use about a quarter of the powder that we have, and we only have 1/10 the guns. But it's going to be loud, so we suggest that you put some cotton in your ears and keep your mouth open. Don't shut your mouth, right? So when this barrage goes off, I have never been more scared in my life. You can see the pictures. I buried my head in mud. We're all down on the ground, and I literally kept my mouth open, my mouth filled with mud. It was so loud, it was so terrifying, and I'm going, nobody's shooting at you. There's not any shells. It's 1/4 of the powder and 1/20th or whatever it was, 1/50th of the cannon stuff. But then at the moment, I get up and I go, running over in the mist and all the fog and the smoke, and I grab the reins of the horse and I say, General, get down. Can't remember who it was, Winfield Scott Hancock, but I kind of overplayed it. And please don't let it get out. I mean, he just said, there are times when a Corps commander's life does not count. And and Ron goes, that was great. Could we just do it once more? And they used take one, and I felt very proud of that. But, we did it again. He still did it, and I didn't have I wasn't going to tell Ron, I just thought it'd be better if he toned it down about. So it's I'm keeping my day job. I
will say this about Ted Turner. You talked about there was no gore.
Yeah.
That was Ted.
Yeah, that's Ted.
Yeah, Ted said, I don't want to see blood and guts. If you can't make a good movie without doing that.
It really is, there's no other film like this film. Mm-hmm. It's long and impossible. Had a theatrical release. It's really there for television, but it's spectacular in its complexity. And, Martin is great, and there's a kind of the thing I love is that you have, in addition to the music of the voice, your body has a music too. There's a little, maybe the awkwardness of the horse that I'm hearing about, but there's a little bit. It's a little bit of a bounce. There's a bounce that you had that was. It was so interesting. I felt like, oh, that's Robert E. Lee, and of course Jeff Daniels as Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain is really an inspired thing, and I got to be friends with Jeff then. And we went, the only other story I have, and then I'll shut up, is
please.
We went to dinner at some tavern out west. I don't know where it was, right, kind of out,
Oh, the Cashtown Inn?
I don't know, may have been Cashtown. We just had there was a big dinner, and there's about 40 people, and I'd brought my daughter then, who was, my two daughters, and Sarah was about 10, 9.5, and she had memorized the cremation of Sam McGee and the Gettysburg Address. And she she did that in front of all these people. The sang-froid of this little girl was just impossible. And then I think it was Stephen who stood up and recited, or somebody there recited, like something from Tennyson or Kipling, like something really, really long, Gunga Din. And it was one of these evenings where you just spent the whole time out in Gettysburg, or what was passing for the Gettysburg battlefield, trying to be not scared out of your mind and having the time of your life. And then this dinner where these people were, including my daughter, were just channeling some of the greatest words ever spoken. It was just about as great a time ever.
That's good. I can see Sarah doing that. So Jeff, this has a pretty profound effect on your change of careers, I guess you would call it at that point. So what does Gettysburg and then the subsequent Killer Angels success and so forth do for you and change your path?
Well, I mean, my whole life has taken a very different, from 1993, has taken a very different course that I never would have predicted. I mean, Ron Maxwell called me right around Christmas time, 93, 94, after the success of the film, and he said, Ted wants to make more movies. To your point, Ted's excited, and Ted wants to do the before and the after, and, you know, we need to do this. We need to do these projects. Like, okay, I thought about it for a while and thought, well, maybe this is something I'd like to try to do. And I called Ron back, and his response was, I've been waiting for your call. He knew what he had done. He had planted the seed, and he knew I couldn't resist it. And the reason I was, because I get this question all the time, weren't you afraid? How did you know how to write a book? I had no clue. But Ron and I had the conversation, if whatever I come up with stinks, it goes in the trash. I mean, nobody will ever see it. So there was no fear. So I would send him pieces as I wrote the manuscript to Gods and Generals was the first thing. And always with the idea that this is for a film. I mean, it's always about Ted being excited. This is the prequel. And my father's publisher, Random House in New York, Killer Angels now, in the meantime, is a #1 bestseller on the strength of the movie. So I'm the businessman in my family, so I'm dealing with my father's estate, and I'm talking to the publisher, and I told her what I was doing. I said, yes, I'm writing the prequel, and it's called Gods and Generals. And she said, oh, send us the manuscript. Okay. So I sent the manuscript off. The call I got back was, we don't care if it's a movie, we like the book. Here's a contract. That changed my life. And that was, 1994. You do the math, that was 30 years ago. And here I am. And, I moved to Gettysburg. I mean, I married a Gettysburger.
Is that what you're called? I finally learned that.
Getty's bourgeoisie.
My daughter is a Gettysburger, and it's again, I'm living a dream. I mean, I meet so many writers who are looking to catch a break, and I'm sure both of you have done the same thing throughout your careers. You meet people who are saying, what can you do for me? Can you help me? There really isn't anything to do to open a door. But I see how many people, they have a passion. They may or may not be good at it, but if they are good at it, what they need is a break. Unfortunately, I can't give them the break. So I see that, and I feel guilty about that because, nobody really, I was given an enormous break. I was given breaks by my father, by Ron Maxwell, by Ted Turner, and by a publisher in New York. And that's pretty rare, and I don't take that for granted.
Your father is so proud, I have to say, Jeff. He's so proud.
Thank you.
So Martin, you do not reprise your role of Lee in Gods and Generals, which of course becomes a movie a few years later. And you told an unbelievable story the other night about how you almost did do Lee, but didn't, and it involves a historic event. Would you share that? About the airplane?
Yeah. That's one of the few times I've ever told the story.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And maybe
I was offered the role of Gods and Generals, and I was filming The West Wing, and we were in negotiation, and it hadn't been settled yet. And meanwhile, I had to clear the schedule. We were going to Washington to film some scenes in The West Wing, and it was the start of our new season, 2001. And if the negotiation had panned out, I would leave Washington and go to Virginia. I think they were filming in Virginia for a couple of days. Then I was scheduled back to Washington, get on a plane, get back to Los Angeles in time to continue filming. For whatever reason, I think it's some divine intervention, we were not able to negotiate. And in my absence, I didn't know it at the time, but Bobby Duvall had accepted the part. And I got that information and went home. And if I had taken the part, I had a reservation from Washington to Virginia, back to Washington, on the American Airlines that hit the Pentagon. I would have been on that flight. That was the only possible way I could have done it and gotten back to LA at the time. And so it was 6 or 8 months earlier, Taylor, my grandson, who was working for me as my assistant on the film, on the series, we were sitting on the plane, American Airlines, going from Los Angeles to Washington to film scenes on the West Wing, and the captain came to me and said, I'm so fond of a show you did some years ago, and I can't find it anywhere. Do you have any idea how? I said, what show is that? He said, The Execution of Private Slowick. I said, yeah, I think I have a copy of that. How would I get it to you? He gave me his card, and he signed it. I sent him the copy. He was the captain that morning, and the flight that hit the Pentagon.
Yeah.
He was the same guy, yeah. So, how do you deal with that? I mean, I was never able to see the film. I've never seen Gods and Generals. I don't know.
Can't do it.
Yeah.
Wow.
What a downer. I want to tell one little story about, two little stories, man. We have time? Two little stories about Ted Turner, whom I adore.
Yeah.
I watched that scene you're talking about. And Ted was in that scene, and he was climbing over. He was in a
Confederate
uniform. I think he was a general or a colonel or something. Colonel, okay. He was climbing over the barracks, and he was charging towards the angle, and he gets shot. And they had a squib in his left pectoral. And the squib went off here, and he went, grab.
This is what I'm saying, bipolar.
So they had to shoot it again. Okay, so about a year and a half later, 2 years, I can't remember when the film premiered. When was it, in 90?
Fall of 93.
93, okay. So we were over in New York. I was doing a tour of the film, and we had rented a hotel, all these rooms in a hotel just above Times Square on a Saturday morning, and everybody went from room to room. Somebody was always ahead of you. So NBC was here, CBS, PBS, and then the print news and so forth. And so we were just making the round, following each other. And I came out of one door after giving an interview, and Ted Turner came out the lead door down at the other end. He saw me in the hall. He yelled out, "Martin, did you tell the Times that Ted Turner gives the rich a good name?" I said, "Yes, sir, I did." "Well, thanks so much."
All right. Well, we got another gig in a couple minutes, so we got to get out. But thank you, Martin, Ken, Jeff. That was a pleasure. Thank you so much. Martin Sheen, Ken Burns, and Jeff Shaara.